Hello and welcome to another video. Did you know that when you take batteries out of a device that says low battery, those batteries still contain useful power? So in this video what I'm going to do is show you how I use the power left in these batteries when they're supposedly dead to power other devices that I use. And the process isn't complicated. If you've got a multimeter you can do it. Even if you've got one of these it might work, and we're going to test that later on. So first of all, using non-rechargeable batteries like these isn't the kindest to the environment, and it's not the kindest to your pocket either. But for some devices, which I'll come on to later on, these are what you should be using. If you can, use rechargeable batteries. They're more expensive to buy, but over the lifetime they're much cheaper to use. I like these ones from Amazon Basics. I'll come onto these later on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be comparing this rechargeable battery, which has a voltage of 1.2 volts, with this brand new non-rechargeable battery from the same manufacturer. And I'm going to be using this multimeter here. If you haven't got a multimeter, don't worry, the theory is still the same. So I'm going to turn this to measure voltage of up to 20 volts. Now bear with me if you don't understand this, it'll become a bit more clear once I've measured it. So this battery, I can balance it on now, has a voltage of 1.25 volts, nearly 1.26. So a fully charged battery, rechargeable one, even though it says 1.2 volts on it, will probably be around about 1.25 to 1.3 on a fully charged battery. Now this one here is a 1.5 volt battery. And this is how much power it has, how much power it can output. So this is non-rechargeable, and they're all 1.5 volts, but this one's unused and it actually reads 1.61 volts. So what happens is you put one of these in your device and you use your device, and then eventually it will run flat and it will say low battery, or it will just turn off and it won't be able to be used. And what happens is the voltage has dropped from 1.5 volts to a lower voltage. So I'm going to show you that on one of these batteries. There it is, it shows 1.5 volts, but it has been used. And let's look at what voltage it's outputting now. 1.27 volts. So this one came out of a device that said low battery. Most people would just throw these away, or better still recycle them. Don't put them in the household waste, they've got to go for recycling. In England you can take them to almost any supermarket and they'll have recycling bins for batteries. So let's just check that again. We've got 1.27 volts for a non-rechargeable battery, but this fully charged rechargeable battery has 1.26 volts. So this can provide more power than this, even though this one is shown as flat by the device it was in. So that got me thinking, these batteries, which we typically recycle or throw away, they've got power left in them. Okay, so that's enough waffling about that. If you are a regular viewer of my channel, you know that I'm fascinated with mini discs, and that's pretty much all the channel's about at the moment. So in here, we've got another rechargeable battery, Duracell rechargeable, with I think they call it a nominal voltage of 1.2 volts. And then when I finished listening to this for the day, I put it on the charger, which connects with a power supply to the mains, and let's do that now. So I'll pop it now, just turn on the charger, it's off at the moment. And what it does, it pops up recharging, and then it will charge that battery back up, ready so it's full next time I want to use it. So we know this device can run on 1.2 volts, around about 1.2 volts, because it's got a charger built into the unit. The actual recharger, the charging circuitry, is in the mini disc player itself. So this just passes through the voltage to there and it charges the batteries. So I got to thinking, well, if this works on a rechargeable battery, which is 1.2 volts, I don't think there's a disc in there, but it doesn't matter. You see it's working there, it shows full battery. Let's go back to our other battery, which I think was this one. Let's just test it again. So this is a non-rechargeable battery. That's right, and it's used. It was 1.5 volts or more when it was new, and the device it was in saying low battery or just it had run out of battery. I'm going to put this in my mini disc player. And we'll just close the lid again. And now it says low battery. So how comes this one has approximately the same voltage as the rechargeable one, but this one doesn't play? But it got me to thinking that these players and other devices must be able to work a voltage lower than 1.5 volts. So if we can find batteries that may be 1.4 volts, then maybe these things like this and my retro game console, the Game Boy Color here, would work on lower voltages, and therefore we can use the old batteries that we'd given up on for some devices to power these. Okay, so I decided to do some experiments. I took a brand new battery fresh out of the box of 1.6 volts, and I put it in one of my mini disc players, and I used it as I would normally do. You can't recharge these, obviously, they're non-rechargeable, and I used it until it stopped playing and said low battery. Then I took it out and measured the voltage. I also did the same in things like this, a Game Boy Color, which I don't use very often, but I use occasionally. And also did the same in one of these, just a little Tac Torch. And the thing I was trying to do was figure out what is the lowest power, the lowest voltage that these devices would run on. So I'm adding this bit in. This part of the video I shot about an hour and a half after I shot the rest of the video, because I was sure I had some notes on my testing of what voltage will power mini disc players and that sort of thing. And since then I found it. I actually found some notes on my phone. So what it was is I used this MZ-N707 mini disc recorder and player just for playing and to see what voltages would actually power the player. So this battery here is 1.28 volts. And it doesn't power the player, it doesn't switch on. There we go, as you can see it says low battery and then just fails. So what I'm doing now, this one's got 1.33 volts. And that one just about powers the player. So the crossover is about 1.33 volts. Anything less than that, when you first put it in the player will probably give you low battery and not want to play. So I got a 1.34 volt battery and I put it in the player, and over 3 days I tested it over 4 playing sessions over 3 days, and I got 4 hours and 17 minutes. After that it wouldn't play the disc, it just said low battery. And I took that battery out and tested it, and it was down to 1.26 volts, which is weird because anything below 1.3 won't even turn the player on. But if it's already in the player, it will play and then give up at 1.26 volts. So what I did was I went through my batch of batteries that were supposedly flat and ready to be recycled, and I found 18 batteries with a voltage of 1.34 or over, and in my estimation those 18 batteries will probably give me 80 hours of free mini disc playing, whereas before I would have just thrown those away and given them away for recycling. Okay, so now back to the part of the video that I shot earlier on. So I just had to look up the results. So most of my mini disc players will work on a voltage as low as 1.35 volts. And the Game Boy Color I use works on a voltage down to 1.25 volts. And this Tac Torch will work on a voltage down as low as 1.1 volts. Now the thing is, if I put a 1.35 volt battery into this, it would work, but it wouldn't work very long. So I had to decide how much time am I prepared to get out of a used battery in one of these. And what I decided was, and I wrote it on my labels, batteries for my mini disc players, anything that has a charge left of 1.4 volts or more. Now bear in mind these are good quality batteries. I wouldn't do this with cheap batteries from the pound shop. you know, we get 4 batteries for £1 or something like that. These are good quality batteries to start. So anything over 1.4 volts, I can power my mini disc players on. And anything over 1.3 volts, I can power my Game Boy on. And anything lower than that, but above 1.1 volts or 1.15 volts, these torches will work on those as well. So now is a good time for me to talk about battery leakage. All batteries, if you leave them in the device, or if you leave them long enough, will leak. They only leak when they run really low. So that one was initially 1.15 volts when I last used it, and I put it in one of these. So I did have 2 of these torches, and one of them I keep on my shelf behind my desk, and I use that very frequently. But one I had clipped to my work bag, and I'd only use it occasionally in a customer's house where I'm under a desk or something, fixing something. And that one got used very infrequently. And when I went to use it one day, it wouldn't turn on. And I opened it up and it had a battery that had leaked in it. And that will really damage your stuff. So do not use used batteries in a device like this that you really care about, or a device like this, or anything you really care about. And especially don't use it in a device you don't use very often, because what it'll do is it'll leak and it'll destroy the device. The battery corrosion gets in there. Some of them you can clean up, but some of them it just kills the device. So forget about used batteries. Any batteries that you use in a device, take them out when you're not using them and store them somewhere else. So what I decided is the one that I keep clipped to my work bag, which I don't use very often, that one's going to have a new battery in it. Because when I'm at work and I need a torch, I want it to work 100% of the time. So that one's going to have a new battery in it. But when it comes to my Game Boy, if I want to play on my Game Boy, let me show you the box again. I have a box of batteries, like a little dispenser I made up. Inside there is all the batteries which are over 1.3 volts. And I don't use it often enough to use them all up. So sometimes I use these in my Tac Torch, which I keep on the shelf behind me, because that gets used approximately once every 2 or 3 days in the office. And I know when that runs out, I can then, it's time to get rid of the battery. So what I do is batteries that are used and no longer of any use go in here, and then they go off to the local supermarket when I remember to take them, and I just empty them all into the battery bin and they'll go off to get recycled. So some of you might be wondering, why don't we just use rechargeable batteries all the time? Well, there are certain devices, bear in mind these have usually a maximum voltage of 1.3, and the better ones don't have much of a self-discharge. They won't lose power just sitting on the shelf and not being used. But they're quite expensive, and there's some things you don't want to use your rechargeable batteries for. So the clock is one of them. This is my desk clock. It works on 2 AA batteries. These ones are, sorry, AAA batteries. Now I don't use rechargeable batteries in this one because there's quite a lot going on. It monitors, it's got a radio receiver in it, and it monitors 3 different temperature sensors around the house, one outside, although they're all inside. So it tells you what the temperature is in different parts of the house, and this one is usually stuck outside the front door, so I can just have a quick glance on this and see how warm it is before I go out. But if I put a used battery in this, even at 1.45 volts or a 1.2 volt rechargeable battery, the screen is quite dim and it can't be seen. It has a light on it, but it's like I can't see it, I can't use that from the other side of the room. So for something like this, I use brand new batteries, and it just runs until the light goes dim, and then I put it in my box for testing and maybe using in a lower powered device. Another important device that you don't want to use a used battery in, you're only going to want to use a good quality new alkaline battery, is smoke alarms or smoke detectors for your house, and carbon monoxide detectors as well, just in case there's any, I think it's carbon monoxide gas leaking out of your boiler or whatever it is. I am not going to trust my family's life to a used alkaline battery or a rechargeable battery that doesn't run on 1.5 volts. So on that subject, if you've got smoke detectors or carbon monoxide detectors in your house, stop the video now and go and check them. Go and test them all, make sure they're working. Or if you're sitting on the loo, I know some of you probably are, but if you're sitting on the loo, wait till you finish in the toilet, wash your hands, go and test all your smoke alarms if they're battery powered. Some of them are 10-year, but quite a few of them are still battery powered. And for those devices, I'm only going to use good quality brand new batteries, and they're going to get changed once a year, and that once a year had just finished for me. So I've got lots of batteries in here which were the old versions of these. They come in different colours, and I don't care what voltage they are, they're going to get changed once a year anyway. But now I can, rather than get rid of these in the recycling, I can use some of these batteries in some of my lower powered devices. Like, I'm listening to mini disc players almost every day, and if they've got enough voltage, I can stick them in there. They're going to get used frequently and not left in there for months. And then I'm getting essentially free power out of these batteries that other people might be throwing away. On another note, if you don't have smoke alarms, they've got to be, if you do, they've got to be changed every 10 years or whatever. If you don't, and you're in England, and you can't afford to put them in yourself in your own property, then if you contact the fire service, the fire brigade, they will come, or they used to come and fit two, one upstairs and one downstairs for you, and it could save your life. So make sure you get good smoke detectors, good carbon monoxide detectors. There was a YouTuber who lost his entire retro computer and retro games collection in a house fire, completely destroyed his house, but thankfully his family got out and they're all safe. It's heartbreaking to see the devastation it causes to his house mentally, but you really need to have working smoke alarms in your house if you care about your life or your family's life. So go stop the video, go check them now, and then come back. And if you check them, leave a comment and saying smoke alarms checked or something like that. Then I know you're a decent human being. Okay, let's take a breath. So this is why I put off this video for so long, because there's so much to say and I can't work off of scripted videos. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get all my batteries together and I'm going to test them all with my multimeter. And these are pretty cheap. You can get a really cheap one. It will still do a good job. This is sort of not the cheapest, but it was a little bit up in price wise. And I think every household should have one of these. You could probably pick one up for about 10 quid on Amazon. I'll see if this one is still available on Amazon. Put a link in the description, you can go and get it. Or anything basically, any multimeter will do this job. And if you haven't got multimeter but you've got something like this, we'll do some experiments. Once I've measured the voltage on the batteries on this, I'll do some experiments and see whether you can use one of these instead to save a little bit of money and not throw away good energy in these batteries. Okay, so I've got set up now. So what I'm going to do is going to test all these batteries, set the multimeter to, I don't know whether you can see that, 20 volts maximum, because all these are going to come way under. I line them all up so they're all the right way around, and I use a CD pen. Actually, I might put a link to these. These are quite useful. There's CD pens, I think, for writing on CDs, but they're good for any sort of glossy surfaces if you want to write stuff on there. So let's do some of this testing. So that was 1.26 volts. So that is only going to be good for my Tac Torch. So let's just give you an example of that. So I put it in now. There you go. Oh, there's the full beam. These got sort of like you can pull the end out. It's hard to show and narrow the beam. These are really good. We used these when it was New Year's Eve or New Year's morning. Me and my daughter walked around our estate watching the fireworks and wishing everyone Happy New Year. And we had one of these each. And they, at the tightest beam, they go a very long way, even on a used battery. So that's 1.26 volts. So what I'll do is, once I've measured each of these, I'll write on the battery what the voltage is. So all of these are the ones I previously measured, and then I got muddled up with some which hadn't been measured or some which I'd then reused. So I'm just going to go through and write down all the voltages on all these batteries, or on some of them, just to show you the process. So I think these four were all out of the same device, so that's 1.25. I can read that, no one else can. 1.26. And 1.25. So I think these all came out of one device. I don't know what it came out of, to be honest. I can't remember. Some of these will have come out of my smoke detectors when I replaced them with new batteries for their annual replacement. So all of these are a set. Now they say don't mix batteries, so you shouldn't mix types of batteries. So you don't want to put one of these in with a rechargeable or one of these in with a Duracell. But all of these, because if one has a voltage of 1.26 and one has a voltage of 1.5, the 1.5 volt one will essentially be charging the 1.26 volt one as it's being used, and then you're wasting energy and they could get hot. I've never known it to actually happen, but they could catch fire. So these four are quite low voltage. They're actually too low for my Game Boy Color, that I've set a minimum on that of 1.3 volts. So these would be good for my Tac Torch. So I'm going to put them in this box here. So these are the really low voltage ones. I haven't got anything that uses sets, so I might end up having to recycle some of these because I've got quite a surplus of them. So let's move on to this batch, which is a bit more mixed up. So that's 1.47. So previously it was 1.5, and I've used it in something, and now it's 1.47. Oops, 1.47. So it's hard to write on a round surface. So this qualifies on my mini disc as anything over 1.4. My mini disc players only take one battery, so they don't need to be paired up. So I can bung that in my 1.4. So this is 1.4 plus, 1.3 plus, and less than 1.3. 1.34, and that was 1.45. It's been used. It's now 1.34. And these are AAA batteries. Now that one's dead. That one's got no usable power left in it whatsoever. And that one's even worse. So those ones are going in the recycling bin, which I've now put in my cupboard. They're no good whatsoever. Okay, so that's the new one I was using for testing, so I'll put that back in now. So it does have some usable power. The other thing you've got to watch of, they've got a use by date on them. And I'll show you in a minute, when you're pairing them up, you want to pay attention to that. Okay, so looking at these, we've got 1.35, 1.34, 1.33, 1.35, 1.34. They're all close enough that you could, if you needed a device that needed 2 or 4 batteries, or even 3 batteries nowadays, you could use these. But what I would do is I'd have a look at the, can you see that? The expiry date. So that's 2029, 2029. 2029, these are all probably from the same batch that I bought in bulk. If you buy them in bulk from Amazon, they're much cheaper. You can see these are not the most recent set. These are the set that I probably bought maybe 6 months ago, and they've been used and they've still got a use by date of 2029. So if that use by date matches up 2029 and the voltage is very close, you can put these in sets of 2 or 3, and then they will be good for use in the same device. So a set of 2 or a set of 3 is good for use in the same device. An example is this. So when we went away over to our friends the other day, I gave this to we took this as well, so my daughter, to keep her occupied in case she got bored. I put brand new batteries in it because I wanted to make sure she didn't have the worry of the batteries running out partway through a game. But for most games, these will last for hours and hours still, even though they're not the full 1.5 volts. Because this will actually work on rechargeable batteries, which are 1.2 volts. So rather than bore you having to watch all of this testing, what I'm going to do is going to use the batteries I've got so far, and I'm going to see whether this, if you've got one of these and that's all you've got instead of a multimeter, will this be good enough to test these batteries. So I'm going to start with this one. It's 1.5, even though it's quite an old one because it's got a 2024 date, and that's quite old, even though it's still within date of a use by. You can see this goes, it pegs it just by the D. So let's grab a new battery, and actually pegs it right at the top. So a new battery being 1.6 volts, the needle was bashing against the end. Let's try this one here. That's 1.48, so it's going to be close enough. You see it moving around just because it's not got good contact. It's not quite at the end, but it's close. Now this one here is 1.35. And let's call that a little bit, you know, like between the two O's maybe. And that one is on the first O, and that one is 1.26. So what you can do if you've only got this, first of all, get one of these. It might cost you, I don't know how much, it will cost you, have a look in the link in the description, and then maybe look for a cheaper one. You only need a cheap one because it's not doing any, it's not testing the mains or anything, it's just testing batteries. So get one of these. Whatever it costs you, you might well save that over the course of a few years by not throwing away perfectly usable batteries. So what you could do is you could put a set of batteries in whatever device you want to use, your Game Boy Color or your mini disc player or whatever battery, whatever device. Ideally a high drain one. These aren't high drain, but one that, not like a clock which will last for months on a battery. Put it in something which will last a couple of hours or a few hours with a new battery. Wait till it says low battery and then measure, have a look and see how far up the needle, how far up the scale that battery goes. And then you can say, right, that essentially is flat for that device. So say it went to the first O and it was flat in the device you want to use. Any battery that goes to the second O or further has got usable life, and it might work for an hour or a couple of hours in that device. And essentially that's giving you free power because you would have thrown these batteries away or preferably sent them for recycling. And you just, every little helps, and it helps. You're not having to recharge a battery, which does take power. It does take a tiny little power, a few pence per charge recycle, but these are perfectly good. Let's not throw them away or send them for recycling unless they're of no practical value anymore. So I think I've waffled enough, kept you long enough. I'm now going to go through the rest of these batteries, which might not be the right power. I'm going to test them all. I'm going to put them in for anything over 1.4 volts, anything over 1.3 volts, and anything over, I think, about 1.2 volts is going to go in there. Then I'm going to put them in my little containers so I know what's good for what. And then I'll be able to use those devices with no cost of power. So thanks for watching. Bye. Oh no, my multimeter just died.